Welcome back. It's Popeye from Milk Tea Time for Localizers. In the previous episode, we've talked about some cultural contexts and identity in Singapore. And today, I think we will delve into this market more by asking the localization professional some questions like the movie subtitle localization and the potential market for Singlish in this country. So let's welcome our interviewee today. Welcome, Ming.
Thank you.
Well, the first question today, I think I would like to make it more relevant to like some other markets, for example, in Southeast Asia. In Taiwan, I remember when I was a child in 2002, there was a movie called Ice Age. Well, when the movie came to Taiwan, it just went viral all of the sudden because of its movie subtitles were like most parts of the subtitles were translated or transcreated into Taiwanese, which was very, very creative. Yeah. So for example, like one of the sentences going that like oh, what are you doing there? So it was transcreated into like, oh, 你在做三小. So I think that's very specific for the audiences in Taiwan in particular. So my question here is that we know that localization is to find the shortcuts to get closer to the target customers, especially in a specific market. I wonder if there's any demand for localization for Singlish.
So if you're talking about the differences, I guess Singlish is now accepted to be a significant part of our cultural identity in Singapore. So you will definitely find people speaking it on TV and other mass media. But if you're talking about localizing to Singlish specifically, since it's not really a formal language that is actively recorded or taught, I don't think it's really possible to localize it in the traditional way, like getting LSPs to find linguists who can translate into Singlish per se. But it can definitely work in some ways. Like for example, if you have ad campaigns where you're taking an international version from, let's say, English or Chinese. For example, if you have a US international English version and you want to localize it for the Singapore market, you can definitely adapt it to have a more local touch. So you can hire copywriters to kind of add some local slang or slogans that would resonate better with the Singapore audience. So for example, in Singapore there is an e-commerce brand called Shopee that is really well known for doing these kind of like local friendly ad campaigns, and they use local celebrities to kind of drive that as well.
Well, in Taiwan, we've also heard a lot about that company. So I think, well, like you are right, like some slogans can be translated into like Singlish, for example. So it's kind of more, I think it's kind of nicer way to get closer to your target customer, right? Well, very interesting. Now, let's go on to the next question. Well, as a localizer, I've been wondering like how we can be dealing with like multi-culturalism, especially in a specific locale. Like as a very experienced localization professional, how have you dealt with like the cultural diversity and the multicultural contexts at your work? And is there any challenges that you think is possibly because of like the multicultural contexts or any confusion? Do you want to elaborate something about that?
Sure. So I guess growing up in Singapore, we kind of have understood that as a living in a multicultural country and even in a, I guess, increasingly globalized world, it's important to understand that different cultures exist and to kind of understand that we are similar in some ways but always different in others. So I guess it's just more of that awareness that different cultures exist, that you have to have some kind of inclusivity and also this awareness that things are always different. So you always need to find out if, for example, what you're localizing is relevant for that market. So I guess the main point is that don't make assumptions that what applies to you applies to this new market that you're looking out for, but also to look for like experts or people that you know are from that culture to give you insights on that culture that you don't know. So I think it's this kind of awareness that we have built from young, and that kind of links to how I would work as a localization professional today.
Yeah, since we've been talking about like what makes localization people very very competitive or like highly qualified for like such a competitive job markets, I will pretty much say that because of the adaptability that we have in like multicultural backgrounds. Like almost like all of us are from different backgrounds and different fields, but we're able to know like when and how to adapt ourselves to like new circumstances, and like you say, try to get rid of the biased opinions when you are put into like a new environment. I think that's really important. Yeah. Well, very good answer. Well, now let's go on talk about. Well, I think that's one of the most interesting questions today. We're gonna specifically talk about like a movie subtitle translation or localization. So my question here today is that, well, I think most of us would be curious about how you guys deal with subtitle localization on the screen. For example, how many languages are supposed to be presented on the screen for audiences in a theater so that they can understand each other or the movie itself?
I think in Singapore, you can find the language of the subtitles when you're booking the movie tickets. So if you go onto the website of the cinema, you can usually see what is the language of the original movie and also the language of the subtitles that they're being provided. So usually if it's, for example, like a Chinese, Malay, or a Tamil movie, or even like a foreign language movie like Korean or Italian movie, then you would usually find the subtitles in English because that's the common language that everyone can usually understand.
So there's only like one language is available on the movie screen?
Yeah, there's only one language available at one time.
Oh, really? Wow, okay. Well, we're happy today to have Min to talk about her experience in Singapore. And I think after every question, I think we're much more familiar with like localization in Singapore or like a Singlish market in this country and how localization possibly or truly works in this market, specific market. So I think, yeah, it's really nice talk today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think before we go on to the end of today's episode, I think our cameraman has some questions, well, specific questions to ask out of her curiosity. So what do you want to...
So I'd like to ask about the language preferences in localizing into Singapore. Like, because we know that there are 4 official languages used in Singapore, but like, how do you decide which language to localize into, and do companies localize into all 4 languages?
I think it really depends on what kind of purpose and what type of content you're localizing into, as well as what kind of platform you're putting it onto. So if it's a more informational kind of piece where you want everyone of all ages to be able to understand, then you would definitely put it into all 4 official languages. So for example, like during the pandemic, the government put all of their COVID-related public health messages in all 4 languages. So if you definitely want that kind of more informational aspect, then you would invest in localizing all 4 languages. If you're talking about more commercial content that, for example, like advertising or some kind of social media that maybe you are only targeting like a specific age group, for example, you want only, let's say, millennials or Gen Z, then you might choose to put it only in English because that is the main language that most of the people in this age group would usually read in and they normally use. For example, if you are, let's say, you have a more culturally specific content, like let's say Chinese New Year is coming up soon, so you are having a kind of Chinese New Year related campaign, then you might choose to put it in Chinese as well, either in both English and Chinese or only in Chinese, and you would also put it on like maybe like the Chinese TV channel, for example, and that's how you kind of decide what kind of languages you would usually use.
So you just talked about TV channels. So there's Chinese TV channels, and is there any other language?
Yeah, so we have TV channels in all 4 languages. Yeah, so we have public broadcast in all 4 languages. They have news content, and they also produce their own TV shows and also some variety shows and kids shows as well in all 4 languages.
So I'll assume that would cover like all races,
Yeah, they will cover
even if they're monolingual.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, so the purpose of these all 4 news channels is also to kind of cater to all age groups and all races. So that even if they're monolingual, they can still get the information that they need.
Well, it's quite interesting to have a conversation today, and well, thank you guys for watching today. And if you have further more questions, don't forget to leave the comments below the video, and I think we will try our best to answer those questions as soon as possible. And yeah, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Milk Tea Time for Localizers. See you next time. Yay!
Okay, that was not a good example. Sorry. Cancel. Redo again.
好像越来越我要吃。
It's not really like a. 你先要吃。哎呦。
这怎么开？
因为我们最多的是叫 Jenny 开。
不要看
真是。
不知道。
Thank you.
Will you make your lipstick?
对，我把它。